Salam alaikum. Welcome to today's session of the Ramadan Pioneer Series, which is an initiative of the Dubai Future Academy, the capacity building arm of Dubai Future Foundation. I'm Markku Wilenius and currently work as a Dean of the Dubai Future Academy. This afternoon, we are honored of having a very special guest, former President of Finland, Her Excellency President Tarja Halonen, with us. Before we launch into the session, for all the participants of this webinar, you can voice your questions in the Q&A section at the control panel below. And we shall try to get as many as possible of your questions into our discussion. But please allow to make a short introduction to our former president, since there might be people here in the audience who do not know her. Her Excellency Halonen served as two terms as a president of Finland from 2000 to 2012. During her presidency, she was a co-chair of the United Nations Millennium Summit, co-chair of the Commission on the Social Dimension of Globalization, and co-chair of the UN High-Level Panel on Global Sustainability, and chair of the Council of Women World Leaders. Prior to her election, she served as a Minister of Social Affairs and Health, Minister of Justice as well, and Minister for Foreign Affairs. Over her political career, which began in 1974, President Halonen was paid close attention to the promotion of democracy, human rights, and the role of civil society. Strengthening social justice and gender equality have been central themes for her. President Halonen has been actively engaged with non-governmental organizations and trade unions. She's also chair of the board of the University of Helsinki. After her exit from the office, the Tarja Halonen Global Sustainability Foundation was established in 2012 to promote President Halonen's work in the field of sustainable development. She continues to work closely with UN and is currently alternate co-chair of the Every Woman, Every Child Movement Steering Group and a member of the Secretary General's High-Level Advisory Board on Mediation. Among other duties, she is also UN Global Champion for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNCCT Land Ambassador, and a member of the group of eminent persons. Welcome to the session, President Halonen. We are delighted to have you.
I'm very happy to meet you, Dean Wilenius, our old friend from the Helsinki University circles, but also I guess so that some of my old friends might be there also in the audience.
Very good. I would like to start with, first of all, you have a very international career, as we heard of this list, which is, of course, including a lot of other stuff as well. I also know that you have had some connections and experience here in the Middle East and UAE. So my first question is that, what are your connections to the region where we are leading this session now?
Do you hope to get the full confession? Okay, so if I say very briefly that I have had some connections to the region where you are now, and that was partly from the time I was a president of my country, and of course also the time of the being a Minister for Foreign Affairs. But especially also, I have had a good contacts in your region because of the issues concerning learning, both the learning of children and young people, but also the lifelong learning. And I have had a pleasure to visit also some of your schools which have adopted the Finnish model, how to organize the basic education system. And of course, we are very interested also to see that how our ideas in education can work in some other circumstances, because of course education is part of the public system of the country, so you cannot move it like a package from one country to another, but the experiences can be worth sharing. So in that way, I said that perhaps there are some people I have met earlier during my visit to the Finnish model schools.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's certainly one of the areas that we can see that there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration here. And as far as I can see, that this is the work is still very much continuing, and it's very delightful that we have this type of relationship between Finland and UAE and this region at large. Now, if we go into the question that we have been kind of fiddling with in the course of these sessions that we have run as Ramadan Pioneer Series. The question is actually, what are the key learnings? And we are now with you particularly interested in terms of the social aspect, the social perspective of this experience that we have gone through with COVID-19. So what is your perspective on that?
Of course, the challenge of the COVID-19 is primarily the health issue. We try to keep as many people as possible in healthy position and also to help them to recover. But what we have noticed here in Finland, and I think also in many other countries, that the health is part of the well-being circumstances of the people. So of course, the restrictive measures are taken to protect people's health, but they have increased isolation in certain sense. And so it has been also the risk to see that I or we and them. And this is in social aspect also quite dangerous thinking, because of course, as we have tried to help people in COVID-19, so we have also noticed that especially for people who are in very old age or who might have some other healthy difficulties, so they have had difficulties to understand why they cannot meet their children, grandchildren, or their friends, why they are not allowed to take visits. And I think that this is really an issue what we have not studied enough earlier. And so I think that that's one of the questions. The other question is, of course, that people are not in the equal position in so-called normal life, but especially now because of this kind of corona risk, that if people have the better situation in their civil life, they are also in much better situation now in this kind of the crisis. And when we are thinking, for instance, the future, the possible, I hope, the realistic hope to get the vaccination, that how we can also treat equally people in that sense, that who are those lucky ones who will get the vaccination, and how we study further COVID or in the future some other similar challenges, that we know that in which way we can healthiest, easiest, but also I could say the most comfortable way to help people to keep their good position in the society.
If you think about what would be the ways how we could prepare the upcoming disruptions, because I guess we all know that they will come in some form, but it really depends then the impact depends on how well we are prepared and how well we are, how agile we are, how quick we are to react. So in those terms, if you look at how we have been dealing with this in the different nations around the world and in the regions as well, where is that you see that we should sort of definitely improve?
So, of course, being a goodwill ambassador for the UN organization, disaster risk reduction, I always say that, of course, if the things are like a disaster, so of course it contains already the thinking that we cannot quite properly know beforehand what will happen. And this is also concerning now the COVID-19, because we didn't know this kind of small but very difficult enemy what we have now. We don't know it so well that we would be well prepared. But some areas can be learned. And this is, of course, that all the weak points of the society, they will be stronger, they will be more difficult in the time of the crisis. So in that way, it's like how could I say, it is a litmus test for us to see then during the disaster that these were the weak points. And then we cannot deny that that's true. For instance, concerning my own country, I can say that even we thought that we can prepare very well for the fact that people live longer, they will be much more years, so-called aging people. Even I always say that aging is the only way to live longer. But I mean those who are 70 plus in this case. So we were not prepared very well. We were not prepared to have so many thousands and thousands of people at the same time to be in the risk. The second point is that, for instance, such kind of issues like education, how education can work in different kind of the circumstances. Like now we have this distance education. So these were in principle organized. But when we faced the facts how to behave now, so there were a lot of things what we haven't thought earlier. Or if we think the health situation, so the question in the big cities or in the remote country places are totally different challenges, but different ways. And in that way, I think that what we have learned is that Dean Wilenius, you know that what is so-called Nordic welfare system. So the system where the society takes the main responsibility concerning the health, concerning the social security, and concerning also education and culture. We have the weaknesses, but in such kind of a crisis situation, we notice that this is then one of the very effective ways to look after the system. Even I say that among the 5 Nordic countries, which have or in principle the same system, we have a very different ways to approach this corona epidemic, and it will be in the future very interesting to compare that which good sides and bad sides in different ways have been. But really, I think that children, young people, elderly people, these are the groups which are very, very important. In some countries also indigenous people. We have indigenous people in the very north in Finland, but they are not in the similar circumstances like for instance, in Latin America, some Indian groups. So where the risk, if they have not normally very much contacted other people, the risk can be much bigger. That's one of the things. But I think that anyway, coming back to the issue that all the groups of the society have an equal value. Of course, we might pay a special interest with the health workers, education workers, transport workers, and so on, in order to guarantee more common welfare of the society are needed. But if we think the basic values, so this is a very, very important issue to see that how we are behaving, how we are treating the most fragile groups of the society.
Yeah, very good. Absolutely agree. I would like to bring in a question from the audience. This is Tarja Halonen, who's asking this question that how, in terms of thinking of the impact, do you think that particularly this social aspect is something that would take a long time until the people actually kind of overcome the impact? And how do you imagine that will happen?
So this, what we now meet with the corona challenge, it can become in the future so-called generation experience. What we who have lived a little bit longer here, we can remember that certain issues in the past history were such kind, what we call it, that it's our experience, a generation experience, what we know and what we tell when we are remembering old days. And this pandemic can be a generation experience for the present younger ones. And so we should help them also to learn from this, that what they should do for the future. Now we are counting the weeks and months, differs from country to country, when we can come back to the so-called normal, whatever the normal is then. But the question is that if we speak about the sustainable development, as you mentioned, I have been quite much involved. So it can be in the future that there are much more difficult challenges, and we don't know when we can come back to the normal. And I think this is the issue what I would like to take also in this discussion, that to see that we are the members of the family, the planetarian family, and we are very strongly connected to each other. And that's why it's not nice to live in unsure situation, but we should guarantee for the future that they could say that this period of this corona epidemic was one of the primary lessons for us to see that what we should do in practice.
Yeah, thank you. You already mentioned earlier the situation with elderly, and we know very much that this virus has affected very, very badly, particularly on the elderly people. But there is more to that. I mean, this region here, particularly, I see there is a huge amount of respect for the elderly people, and I see there's a certain bias in, if you talk more globally, that we have a kind of a tendency to respect rather the youth and the young rather than the old. And yet the fact is, as you know well, that we are moving to a society which has much more elderly people than it never had. And we need to think this in terms of what is the constructive role for these elderly people that are much better fit than they were in times back, but yet at the same time they are kind of crippled by the current way how we easily deal with elderly, putting them aside of the activities of society. What do you think about that?
I think that it's good to perhaps to repeat what my mother already, the late one, my mother said to us when we were thinking about the difficulties of our life. She always said to us that, my dear, you cannot change the past. You live in present and you are building the future. And trying to keep together these three things, past, present, and future, this is a development. So the development is not only what you see in the future or what you see present, but you have also to remember what was the past. So you know that from where you come and where you go. And so I think that one of the benefits that we have so much elderly people or those who are plus 70, plus 80, is that they can tell us that which kind of the challenges they have had, how they have recovered, what should we do. And so we don't need to be patient concerning the injustice things in the society. We have to say that if it's not justice, we want to change it. That this is the good side of the young people, that they are not at all patient concerning these kind of negative things. But what they should be more patient is that sometimes to make a better future takes time. And when for instance, I myself tell sometimes about the challenges, the obstacles, what we have had in our society, and then young people say to me, but then you change it. I said, yeah, but it takes 20 years, 30 years, or even 50 years. And then they look quite surprised. How can you think that we are ready to make the reforms for the 50 years time. And so that's concerning the sustainable development.
Yeah.
You have to be ready to see that the reforms you are doing, they are not coming for you at once, but you are doing it for the future. And that's how your parents and grandparents build also the society. And I think that this is one of the very important issues to see, that there is a very clear and practical links between the different generations. The fact is, of course, that that part of the generation who are very, very actively in working life, so they have not everyday time to think this kind of the periodical wisdom. But I think that the young ones, even children, the young ones and then the elderly people, they can tell us that there is the past, present, the future, and we have to learn to know that. But it also tells a certain kind of encouragement that there are so many things what we have succeeded to improve in this world. We still have a lot of poor people, but we have made a lot of reforms in that. We have still, of course, different kind of diseases in the world, but we have won many, many battles on that way, or many other things where we can say that, yes, we can do if we want to do it. And that's why I think that it's encouragement.
President Halonen, you have been, as already mentioned, you've been working a lot with different UN organizations, and UN, as we know, is the real platform for international collaboration. But as we think about, for instance, the experience of this COVID-19, we still find ourselves that there are nation states mostly that are taking decisions by themselves, and there is not a real global union to deal with these issues in the real sense of the word. So with your experience in UN and with your ideas, what should be kind of a next step to build this kind of a global community, what would you say? What would be the right way forward to build?
So I would say that UN is nothing which is outside of us. It's good to remember that we, the member countries, we make United Nations. And I'm very sad to accept the fact that we have also the countries, even very big, rich countries, which think that they are the first and we make ourselves the great again. And they don't think that the planet is one. And the planetary population, we the people, we are just one. And so the bad thing is, of course, for this unity, but it's also bad for themselves, because this kind of like COVID-19, but there will be also the others in future, this kind of the diseases, they don't respect the borders, they don't respect the capital in that way, that it's only for those, not for us. But we, the others in that way, we who think in such a way that we are one. So we have also the difficulty that, for instance, if we think the vaccination in the future, and we know that it's not only that whether it's working, whether we can do it, whether it works, and how it should be delivered. And so it's also the question, who could get it? It's a question that are all the citizens of this planet equal on that way? And for instance, my own country, Finland, has been very strongly underlined the fact that when we are one of those countries who are doing now quite advanced experiments concerning the vaccination, that then in the future the vaccination should be also in such kind of the medical means what are also available for the people more generally. And so very often it has been in the past that even there are different universities and research centers which have made this perhaps together also internationally. So after a while, the big international medical corporations have taken and how could I say that the certification that they can do it and deliver it, and so they also design the price. And so I think that this is a very good question to think that if we could get the vaccination, for instance, I'll say just an example, this is the imagination, in next November, and you will get so and so many vaccination issues in your country, how do you think that it would be delivered? Do you think that the old one or the children or the health workers, who could get it? Or is it possible just with the money? And I think that this is an issue for every country, not only for you there and for us here, but it's more even international in that way. And so I think that what we should do now in United Nations, we should everywhere where it's possible to strengthen the feeling that we means every single, as we say in a sustainable development agenda, what we all have accepted. We have said that no one will left behind. And this is in practical circumstances, this is very, very hard. This is very, very difficult. But I don't know whether we will succeed in 100%, but we should very, very tough way to try to get this kind of approach.
Yeah, but I can hear from your voice that you still bear a lot of hope that we can move on and really build into this no one leaves behind type of the policy in a real way as we are moving forward and having something like this might be coming up in the next wave and so on. So
in Wilenius, you know this old saying, what I say, that the hope and imagination is bridge to the future. But it's just this principle, it's a bridge, but then we have to build it. And that's why every morning we have to be optimistic. And I hope also later on in the evening, but at least every morning.
Well, okay, and that leads actually us to another topic, which is one of your favorite topics, which is lifelong learning. Again, if you look at the situation, we're coming out slowly of this crisis, and there has been this shock, and it has accelerated a lot of the learning in a rather rude way, I would say, but certainly has done that type of the effect. So how would you think this in terms of the policies we should be running, as this is an implication perhaps from the larger issue that we are moving into the societies where unexpected becomes more like expected. So which means that the rapid learning in whatever age you are, in whatever position you are, what is your task in this work, you need to adapt pretty soon and quick. So what is the kind of a mentality, and what are the maybe perhaps type of the structures that we need to adopt to kind of live up to that challenge?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing in education, in learning, is that you have to feel it, that it's something positive. Sometimes I tell to the children and young ones that it's like an adventure, that we don't know where you will go, but we try to prepare to help you with such kind of the resources that wherever you will be in the future after 20, 30 years, this what you have learned is important, useful. And of course, the young ones will make very quickly the question, how can you know that what is the most important to learn when you don't know what is then our targets? I said that the most important thing is that you are ready to learn. This is the most important thing, that you will be all your life interested to learn more, to feel it, that it's a benefit, it's something you love. And this is, of course, not the fact with us, with the elderly people always, because these ideas were not always adopted in the 20, 30 or 50 years ago. And that's why another important issue is that how to wake up this kind of the pressure, how we can wake up it in the minds of the people. That even the experience from the education or the school were not the best possible one, but now they can feel, they can refine it, the pressure of learning. This is the most important. But then, of course, treating equally the boys and girls really equally, not only at school, but also at home, so that the boys and girls will get the similar equal opportunities to make their homeworks, to get their encouragement, and so on. This is very important because it happened to be so that the men are 50% and women are also 50%, that only 50 plus 50 makes a 100%. And we will need for the future sustainable development all the human resources we have. So I mean, it's practically, it's for the both ways we benefit on that. But then also, always when I tell that we have a lot of improvements in education, the young ones will nick and say, yes, yes, madam, this is true. But when I say then that your education, my dear, your education will become old-fashioned much sooner than what happened with your father or mother, so they become serious. So yes, immediately you have to be ready to learn more. And this is not just a question that if the society and our knowledge, our information concerning the world is changing, so we have to learn it, to be ready for that. And it doesn't mean only that those who are in working life will do, but it means every single member of the society, because the modern society works as well as its members, citizens can do that. And I think that this is very important. But then in practically, what the pandemic now has put us to face is that we thought that we know what is a distant learning, because normally, of course, children are in your country and also in our country, most of the countries, we are at school, physically at school. And we thought that we might organize it with computers quite easily. That fact is true. We can organize it pretty well. But what we have underestimated is that the partnership of other school boys and girls and the teachers is much, much more important than what we had thought. And when we asked in Finland, for instance, now when the schools are open again, that what is the best thing what you are waiting for? And then they said, my friends. And this is really true, because meeting their friends and eating together and doing all things together, it seems to be very, very valuable, much more valuable than we thought. The second point, if I say with a certain sense of humor, that we parents, we also notice that we grandparents, that it's pretty difficult to organize the school boys and girls to work well the whole days. But it's certain issues they are very happy and they do, but some other issues they nicely said they need a little bit of elderly people's guidance, that you have to do also those parts what you don't like that much.
Yes, I think this must be the experience of many people. Actually, there came one question from here in the audience from Christina Maeda, asking that why Finland chose to open the school and whereas we still keep them.
The first thing was that we noticed that children are not so sensitive concerning the corona, that they are not in that big risk, that the physical resistance system is in such a way good that we don't expect them to become ill. But the second point is that what I have just explained, that we noticed that school is education, but it's also partnership. And before our summer holidays, what are starting quite soon, we thought so that it's important for them to be, even these 2 weeks we still have left, to come back, to meet their friends, their teachers, to remember all these circumstances where they normally learn. And then also that the teachers could also a little bit, how could I say, coordinate and see that which children we need more help. Because of course, not all families are similarly easy for education, not only concerning the financial circumstances, but also that how well the parents can be at home and ready to help the children. We had a lot of, by the way, we have a lot of all kinds of systems that how the people, the children have to be, they have had more distance between each other. They eating when we have the school meals. So they have made a new schedules that only the one class in the same time can get the meal, and they are washing their hands much more frequently what they used to do, and all such kind of things. Are a lot of thoughts, but these are the technical effects.
Yes. Is there there's again another question that comes actually from the audience, but it's also very much my question. So that if you think about the situation again, what we've gone through, and we can think of some other these type of events, but usually they are quite dramatic events like wars or something. When we think about how we actually come out of here, then how can we really make use of this learning that we are doing here, and what would be the right way actually to do that, so that we sort of make sure that there is this kind of a collective process that understands, okay, for these reasons, this whole thing came up. I would take an equivalent, which is not very good, from a financial crisis, which was 12 years ago. It was a big crash, and I have been questioning afterwards, how much did we really learn about that? How much the financial system really learned about that? And because that's the opportunity that we have in these difficult situations. So, what is your view on this?
Better to say my feeling, because we don't know really how much we have learned before we are in the future, and then we can see that perhaps you and the other scientists will say that you didn't learn this and that. In Finland, for instance, we have a very, very bad financial crisis in 1990s, early 1990s, and that challenge came outside Soviet Union collapse, and they have been a very important trade partner for us. It has been also other issues. And then what we in those days we didn't do well was that we didn't invest enough in the future. We were limiting our resources in education and in many other areas of the welfare society. And then next time when we have a difficulty, then we say that now we have learned this, that now we don't cut them. And that's the same what we repeat now, that we don't cut the resources in education or in science, because that's something what we are building the future. I am not yet ready to say that how it will be implemented in the next annual budget of my country, but at least people say so, that they try to keep the future in their memory. One thing what we have never faced earlier, and this is the same in all Western countries, that earlier when we have tried to tackle the financial crisis and such kind of things, so the consumers have been ready to consume, but they haven't had possibilities, money enough. Now we have in two ways the challenge that, of course, now during the pandemic period, they cannot consume because they are isolated. They have hoped to be at home and not make shopping or such kind of things. But the next thing is that the people have started also to think what is quite correct concerning the sustainable development. They will say that, is it really correct thinking more sustainable development, that if we are trying to consume as we did, should we more invest in such kind of the future projects, what we give the more sustainable future for us in renewable energy resources, perhaps in services and so on. And this is not yet, I cannot say that I see that how it will go, but at least the people have.
Let's hope so. Let's hope.
Yeah,
so.
I hope so, and it's a start thinking and in which way. And
at least
we have had stories from China or India, which I don't know whether they are true, that how the children have looked at the sky and said that, "Mommy, it's really true that the sky is blue," because they have now seen it like it is without all this fog from the factories. In Finland, I think that the lesson has been less dramatic because we have a lot of nature, but still people have started saying that, oh, it's so fantastic that even in the time of this isolation, we can go to forest, we can go to the seaside, and we can meet the nature. And I think that this kind of the thinking could be something people now on. But then there are also the challenges. In some countries, there are a lot of rumors that how this or that community or country is responsible for this COVID-19. And in Finland, it's not very strong, this kind of thinking. We mainly think that, that of course, the nature is one. We are part of the nature. And there are a lot of such kind of micronisms what we don't know from the nature. But when our borders come closer and closer to each other, we don't know that what will be the next mysterious thing from the nature which will hit us. Yeah. And that's why we learn also to see that let's be together with the people, but let's respect also the area of the nature. And this is a little bit more complicated item. And I think that it has come also for our discussions from, as I already mentioned, that for instance in Brazil or in Canada, some of the areas of the indigenous people, they have tried to protect each other by saying that not allowed. In the same way what we have done in more populated areas concerning the capital area, we had it also in Finland that the capital area was in extra charge in that way that we couldn't travel from the capital area to other parts of the country.
Very good. President Halonen, I know very well, and I'm not the only one, that for all your life and your active life as a politician, the decision making, you have been always defending the rights and equality of the women. And I know that it's a big topic here as well, and there is a lot of promotion of that. What would be your message and advice to people and women particularly here, but let's put it all over the world, that what would be the right way to looking at the prospects for the future?
So this is just my slogan, 50 plus 50 makes 100. In the matter of fact, it makes even more than 100, because in the countries where you have gender equality, we have noticed that it has a positive impact also, for instance, in GDP, which is not, of course, the only important measure for the welfare, but still that it seemed to be useful for the women themselves. It's for their equal rights as human beings. But it's also the question that in such a way we can also try to choose the how could I say, the best fitting areas for both men and women. And so I say always that when our grandparents' parents decided in early 20th century, in 1905, that also the women would get the full political rights. So this means much over 100 years ago. So those grandparents, what we had, they had no evidence in those days to say that whether such kind of equal rights could be good benefits or not. They took it from the individual side that we are, after all, human beings and we should have the same rights. And it was a great success story. But today we have these evidences. And so it doesn't mean that all men or all women are similar. They might have some characteristics which are similar. There might be the gender differences. We don't know how much, because in this historical situation, so much is also because of the impulse by the societies and families and so on. But anyway, it seemed to make at least happier people also. Then when they can choose what they study, what they do, they can choose their life more. Everything is not in our hands. Of course, there is something else than the people. But still, I think that this is very, very useful. It's very encouraging. And I can also witness that good role models, the women even the few ones who can make these steps forward can be role models or encouragement, both for the boys and girls. It's very interesting also concerning myself that when I was the first female president, the 11th president of my country in 100 years, the girls first, they said when I became a president that, whoa, I become also president. And it was very much in this kind of the feminine touch. And then one of the boys brought me and said to me that, is it true what the girls said at school, that the boys cannot become president anymore? And then I said, my dear, no, it's not true, that both the boys and girls can become a president if they so want and they are suitable for that. And so I think that this kind of understanding between men and women, boys and girls is very important. It's not either this or that, but it's both that. And this makes this richness of the society.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would now like to give a word to His Excellency Carl van Belhoel, who is our Chief Executive Officer in Dubai Future Foundation. Carl van, the floor is yours.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Markku. President Halonen, first of all, thank you so much. We cannot thank you enough for sparing the time and joining us today. I'd like to start first by wishing you well in those challenging times and wishing your dearest and your families and all the people of Finland the best, and hopefully us as a globe will all get through this in the fastest time possible. And secondly, thanking you for sparing the time and joining us today. Is an amazing discussion. I'm a big fan of your initiatives in general, and a big fan of all the things you have supported throughout your all your efforts throughout presidency and beyond. And also a big fan of what you have just said today in today's session, which was simply music to my ears, on how you focused on unity and you focused on the main priority for us is to go in a global effort and having a mechanism where us as a whole globe can stand up against something as big as this global pandemic, which had we done that, probably would have been in a much better situation in handling the current pandemic. Maybe Markku and the team have heard me say this several times on how much this is important, but listening to those kind of things from a leader like you is definitely refreshing for us. So thank you again for reiterating it. And I have no questions. I'm just here to thank you and to tell you that we're honored to have you. And potentially this can be a Kickstarter of a long-lasting relationship with yourself. So thank you again for joining us. And Markku, thank you for moderating a great session.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if I say one thing, okay, also very optimistically, I said, yes, one day we will meet each other. One day we will shake hands to each other and say, that here we are. We have covered and we do the better future.
Absolutely.
All the best for you. All the best.
Thanks to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. We have time for a couple of questions and answers, and there has been a couple of questions that have one way or another related to the issue. Again, what's happened next, which is also my favorite question. And but it's particularly from two aspects, because we have seen how this globalization has been kind of expanding very rapidly, taking all the new forms, and this has been kind of a parade for the globalization for the last 30 years, at least, if not longer. And then we start to see how there is the pendulum is kind of going towards the other end, and there are a lot of this kind of deglobalizing tendencies that will make the globalization also anew. But also that there is maybe as a result of the learning of the crisis, there is maybe also a bit more respect of the local, and what can be sourced out of our local resources and use them rather than always reaching out for somewhere else if we get that a little bit cheaper. So that is, I'll leave the other part of the question. Maybe you just respond to this one first.
Yeah, I would say only that when we made this report by ILO, International Labour Organization, we were co-chairing, I and Benjamin Mkapa, Tanzania, the president of that day, in that country. So we tried to see the dual face of the globalization, that how it has helped for millions and millions of people come from the poverty to more decent life, and then also the other side with kind of the difficulties it had caused. And we noticed that the most important issue is to notice that globalization have this dual face, that good and bad. And then we tried to warn 2004 when the report was given about over-enthusiasm concerning the globalization. We said also that it was built mainly for the production frames in such a way that what's good for the product, so which is most effective, how to share international the work. And in that way, it has the logics at how to do it. And I think that that will also remain. But then otherwise, we noticed also that it has developed so strongly to this international share of the work that it has made even the globalization itself, this production system, too fragile. That if something is lacking from the certain country X, mainly nowadays from China, it could be whatever country, and then you are lacking it in another country, for instance, in Finland. So this is too far away in this contact. And that's why I think that quite many producers have started thinking now that over-globalization is not safe, that they should more think in regional ways, that how to do that. It doesn't, of course, take away the global cooperation, but I think that it will underline also this regional cooperation and importance for that. Just now, I'm in working in Sitra, which is the Finnish National Research
Innovation Agency.
Innovation Center, where you were working a long time before you left where you are now. So we have just today discussed about that what will be our next agenda, and one of them will be globalization. We will come back to this what are the weak points and the stronger points of the globalization. I have been also involved to making the book, international book concerning globalization, and I'm happy to tell that both the University of Helsinki is involved in that, but also many other writers, like also Stiglitz, you know, from the past. And this kind of ideas have come at the same time. When we started to reinvest the globalization, it happened last autumn, last fall. And I said to the Professor Vilkunen, she was one of the activists who studied this international cooperation. I said just recently to her that you are the real future seer, because you could do it in half a year before we have this COVID-19, that we would need to think again and research again the globalization. So I really think so that globalization will be in focus of international scientists, but also the politicians and an average every man and woman, in such a way that what does it mean that my food or my clothes are coming from the different part of the world, and should we do something of that also here? And of course, the COVID-19 showed it very well, because we need a certain health productions in order to keep people in safer position. And we noticed that everything happened in China. Now today is China, tomorrow it can be India or some other countries, but we noticed that anyway, monopolizing the production in few countries. That's
absolutely true. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to stop the conversation. We have a time until 6 o'clock.
Sorry, I speak so well.
No problem, no problem. And these are so exciting, your views and this whole discussion. I would like to very warmly thank you, President Halonen, for this time for us. And I think there has been some great learnings. And I would like to thank my team, our team in Dubai Future Foundation and Dubai Future Academy, particularly Asma Al-Hamed. Thank you, Carl van Belhoel, our CEO, for your insights. And so we come back to these topics and issues. And thank you for all the participants very much. And just to hopefully see many of you joining us again tomorrow, when we have a session 10 o'clock in the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for invitation for your invitation. So thank you. In Finnish we say kiitos, and I think in Arabic it's something like shukr.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.